Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Star Wars for the Commodore 64, and I believe this one was published by Parker Brothers in 1984. There were a few different games released that were just like this game, and even for the Commodore 64 there seems to be at least two different versions of this exact same game. This is the Parker Brothers one, and based on other videos I've seen on YouTube, this is probably the weaker of the versions. This game is based on an arcade game. A really fun arcade game, actually. I used to play this one all the time when I found it in an arcade. They had a stand-up cabinet, and they also had a sit-down one as well. This is basically just the Death Star trench run, and this game was ported to a ton of different systems in the early 80s. The arcade game is pretty awesome, but not all of the versions that made it to consoles or PCs were that great. There's a relatively rare Atari 2600 version out there too that I haven't played yet. That one looks a little rough. The Commodore 64 version, having more power to its system compared to the 2600, I imagine this one is a slightly better job than the Atari. This is a repetitive game, and I think there's no way around it. It's pretty simple, all things considered. You pilot an X-Wing, and when the level starts, you get the good old Star Wars jingle. You'll recognize it when you hear it. The first stage, you're out in space, flying towards the Death Star, and you need to defeat a few waves of TIE fighters to get to the next stage. At first, it's only 2 or 3 TIE fighters at a time, and you need to not only shoot the TIE fighters, but you need to shoot their laser fire as well. The fire in this game looks like a little fuzzy stippled cloud drifting towards you. You kind of mash the fire button a lot, and you're aiming to destroy this incoming fire, and I'd honestly say that this is more important to you than actually trying to shoot the TIE fighters. You're shooting the TIE fighters, it's more of a secondary target really. If you focus on the incoming fire, you'll stay alive. The TIE fighters will eventually just drift into your sights, and that's when you get them. You're controlling a reticle in this game, and you aim with that, and I have to say it doesn't control very well. It's not that responsive, and I find myself overcompensating a lot. It's just not that tight on control. Granted, we're talking about the Commodore 64, and the joystick is pretty simple overall, but still, this is not that great in terms of control. Plus, we have standard flight stick controls, which means you pull back on the stick to move the reticle up, and you push forward to move it down. The thing with that is, that actually moves the reticle and not the ship. If this was a straight flight control, what I would expect is the entire ship to move, not just the reticle. You push forward, you'd have the entire perspective shift as you move the vehicle. I guess point being, the handling is a little crummy in this one, but it does get the job done. You have shields in this game, and if you can avoid enemy fire, you can keep your shields and stay in the game. But if all your shields are depleted, a shot's going to destroy you, so you really need to pay attention to that incoming fire. After the first stage, you're suddenly in the Death Star trench, and you're dodging incoming fire and trying to get to the end of the run. At the end of the run, if you shoot the right spot, you will blow up the Death Star and start over. The second time you go through, however, the game is not only a little tougher, but they insert another level, and I think that's kind of weird. In this, the second time you run through it, after you fly in space and defeat a few waves of TIE fighters, suddenly you find yourself flying along top of the Death Star before you head into the trench. Now you're dodging towers and you're trying to make your way to the end. It's just kind of strange that they don't have that level the first time you go through, but they do in the second. There are things in this version that are kind of weak. First, I think the TIE fighters, I don't like the way they look. They're these little squat, solid icons on the screen. In the arcade version, they make them raster-looking line graphics. And I don't know, I guess it just feels a little inconsistent with the source material. Also, with the line graphics in the arcade, when you shot a TIE fighter, you got to see it break apart in these pieces, and it looked really awesome. Here, the vehicles just disappear. I think there are some other things that are kind of lacking here too. In some of the other versions I've seen, you actually get to see the Death Star in the distance as you're approaching when you're on the first level. That's not part of this game. Also, when you blow up the Death Star in this game, you don't actually get to see it break apart, and that's kind of a bummer. Just suddenly you're back out in space, and there's an explosive flash around the edges of the screen indicating that you've succeeded. It's definitely a letdown. I know that there are other iterations of this game have more action appearing on screen, they have better explosions, and even for vector graphics. I mean, all the versions I've seen of this game, they do look reasonably similar. I know these other versions aren't perfect by any means. They have their own detractors. What I've seen of those versions, it's usually related to smoothness of animation, and sort of a choppiness. You know, the refresh doesn't seem to be that great. But, I don't know. I'm not sure which one I actually like better. Well, that's all I have today for Star Wars for the Commodore 64. It's better than some, but not as good as others. I would also say that overall, I think most people would agree, no matter how good you think this game is, it's definitely better than the Star Wars Holiday Special. If you need to compare, go find that special on YouTube and kill an hour of your life. You're welcome. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on another video.